What's up, Ocean? You got Matt here. Today I'm bringing you a tier list on the best terrestrial types in competitive Pokemon. This is going to be your guide for not only singles, but for VGC as well. I've gone through and made a list of pros and cons for basically each individual type here. So if you're excited for the video, then do me a favor and leave a like on the video to help us reach our like goal of 75 likes. Make sure to comment your thoughts on today's video for your chance to be named the winner of the comment of the day and have your comment appear on the screen right about now. And of course, subscribe to the channel. This is the first video I'm recording since we hit 3,000 subscribers. So guys, I want to give a big thank you to all of you for helping us reach that target. It is really appreciated. Let's go ahead and jump on into it, starting off with the bug type. I should actually explain quickly what each of these different tiers are going to be referring to. So we have the S, A, B, C, and this is not going to be D. This is going to be the F tier. That's what I have in my notes here. So the S tier is going to be an option for basically any Pokemon to run. I think that there is maybe like 90% of the Pokemon that are available could effectively run this type and run it really well. That's what's going to make it an S tier Pokemon. As for an A tier Pokemon, most Pokemon are going to be able to use it effectively. I'd say anything between like 75 and 90% could use it effectively. Maybe 60 and 90% could use it effectively. That's going to be qualified as an A tier Pokemon. The B tier are going to be mostly used for stab options and some niche cases. Really, they're specifically going to be used for those stab cases. That's really the main reason why, because stab is so powerful with Terastallizing, and we have to make sure that we're differentiating which is more important, the changing of the type or the boost in stab. The next one is going to be C tier. This is going to be, they see very little play. Very few types are going to be here, to be honest, but I do believe that it's important to mark down which Pokemon, or which types rather, are going to be seeing such little play. And then lastly, the F tier. This is going to be set up so they should never be run unless, in one exception, certain stab. That's it. Like, honestly, I could see maybe like 95% of Pokemon that have the option to run these types here as stab, and they are not going to be running them because there's other options that are just better. So let's go ahead and get started here with the first type we're going to cover. That's going to be the bug type. Bug straight to F tier. Now, here's the thing with bug. Sure, stab options like first impression, U-turn can be really nice. My concern with it is that overall the typing is just bad. It's a really bad typing in general. The fact that you are weak to rocks is terrible. You have a couple of nice resistances to like fighting and ground and grass, but let's be honest, there are better types in the format than those three types I just mentioned. So you really want to go with something else. At the same time, why would you want to transform into a Pokemon that is now weak to rocks when you weren't weak to rocks to begin with? And there's so many big hazard setters in the metagame right now. Glimmora is an amazing Pokemon in the format. And that just sees so much play. It sets up hazards turn one. That's basically it. You gotta get rid of them. And it's hard to get rid of them with Goldengo being the most popular Pokemon in the game. So I don't think that going with bug is going to make a lot of sense for basically anything, unless it's like specifically like Slitherwing or something. That's really it. Moving on though is going to be the dark type. Now dark is honestly incredible. I think it is actually going to be the first type to go into the S tier. So dark in general. The reason why I like dark so much, first of all, it resists dark itself. Very valuable. But second, and arguably more importantly, is going to be that it resists ghost. Having that resistance to ghost is incredibly valuable because ghost type Pokemon like Goldengo, Dragapult are really running the format right now. They're really amazing. But on top of that, you have resistances to dark, so you resist the Chi-Yu, the Chien-Pao, the Roaring Moon, the Kingambit. All these Pokemon are really high tier Pokemon. And for VGC, one of the most important things in VGC is going to be Prankster. So if you are dark type now, you are immune to the Prankster type attacks that are coming your way. So very valuable in both situations there. The boosting the dark type attacks is also really good and very effective as stab options for Pokemon like Chi-Yu or Kingambit, as I mentioned before. I think that obviously you have one of the worst types in bug to start off, and then one of the best types in dark to go second. It's a little bit funny that they're just next to each other like that. Moving on though is going to be Dragon. Dragon's gonna be the first Pokemon, the first type I put into the B tier. Why the B tier for Dragon? Let's be honest, who really wants to transform into a Dragon type? Yeah, it's a fine typing, it's fine overall. The issue is you're not hitting anything super effectively except for Dragon types. So really, the best type of Pokemon is going to run Dragon type Terastallizing is going to be, well, Dragon types. That's really it. So something like a Baxcalibur, that's a really good Pokemon to run Dragon. Dragapult is good to run Dragon, but it mostly wants to run a different type in Ghost. In general, there's a lot of good options to have with Dragon types, but they're always going to be Dragon type Pokemon turning into the Terra Dragons to be able to boost their stab options, their Dracos, their Outrageous, their Dragon Claws, Scale Shots, whatever the case may be. And that's why Dragon falls into the B tier. Moving on though is going to be Electric, which Electric is interesting. I'm actually going to put it into the B tier, but I think it's actually going to be a little bit better than Dragon, if I can put this down there. The reason why I think Electric is better than Dragon is for a couple of reasons. The first one is that it gives you an immunity to paralysis. Very, very useful. The fact that you get that in VGC is huge. Thunderwave, Stun Spore, whatever are all very common things to see in competitive Pokemon, so having an option to be immune to that is valuable. Also, you only have one weakness, to ground. There are some Pokemon that have Levitate, so giving that Pokemon an electric type basically means it's immune to its only weakness, and that means it resists or is neutral to every other type in the game. Very, very valuable. It also works extremely well with ice type Pokemon. Now, obviously, I mentioned that B tier was going to be specifically for Pokemon that are turning into this type or using it for stab options, except for some really niche cases here, and this is one of them. Ice type Pokemon love to turn into electric types because they have their original stab, which is going to be the ice type attacks, with their new stab being the Bolt Beam, or the electric type attacks to create the Bolt Beam coverage. Bolt Beam is a great offensive combination. Having electric and ice is so fantastic. They're arguably the best combination of two type of attacks together compared to anything else. Maybe the only other option might be Ghost and Fighting, but I'd really suggest going with Bolt Beam over Ghost and Fighting, in my opinion, because there are fewer immunities to electric and ice compared to Ghost and to Fighting. Moving on though to Fairy, another Pokemon, another type is going to end up in the S tier. I like Fairy a lot. The fact that you're immune to Dragon is a big deal. There are a lot of really good Dragon types in the format. Think of Hydreigon, Roaring Moon, think of Garchomp, Dragapult, I was going to say King Gambit, but Baxcalibur. A lot of these Pokemon are there, but also, and maybe even more importantly, it resists Dark. Having the resist to Dark is extremely important because there are so many good Dark types around. Chien-Pao, Chi-Yu, King Gambit, all these Pokemon are there. In doubles, Grimmsnarl is extremely popular. Having access to a Pokemon that's going to be neutral, or resisting rather, those attacks is very, very important. It also has an argument for the best defensive typing in the game. And on top of that, as Tera Blast with a physical Tera Blast, it gives a lot of Pokemon a really reliable and consistent Fairy type attack that is physical. Play Rough is obviously a good attack, but it's only 90% accurate and has a chance to miss. Spirit Break just doesn't have the distribution compared to Play Rough or even Tera Blast in that case. So I think that having a Fairy type Tera Blast or Fairy type Pokemon is really useful as a Terastallizing Pokemon. Moving on though is going to be Fighting. Now Fighting I have a bit more respect for than I initially thought I did. When I first started just describing where this would go, I thought it was going to end up in like B, maybe even C tier. But no, I'm actually putting it into the A tier. Reason being is, again, just like I mentioned before with the Fairy type Pokemon and the Dark type Pokemon, that the typing of Dark is so incredibly good in this format. So having access to a Terastallizing Pokemon going for Fighting is very valuable. Also, Dark, being immune to Psychic is a big deal. Pokemon like Espathra that are going to be running something like Store Power with either Dazzling Gleam or something like Tera Blast to go with Tera Blast Fighting is really good. So now these Pokemon that are Psychics or immune to Psychic type attacks, like these Dark type Pokemon, are going to be taking super effective damage from the Tera Fighting. Very valuable there and definitely belongs in the A tier, basically just because of that alone. But it also is really good to create your own stab options. Pokemon like Slitherwing, Iron Valiant, Great Tusk all have insanely high attack stats with close combat. So you're getting basically double boosted close combats on top of that is really, really valuable. Then we have Fire. Now, Fire overall, is it a good typing or is it not? I have mixed feelings about it because number one, you are weak to Rock and that really hurts. However, you are immune to Burn, which is a big deal. So I'm actually going to put it into the B tier. The Fire types in the game right now, are they great? They're not really all that. Like the best one is Chi-Yu and it's not even really close. That Pokemon's not legal in VGC. The main thing that I like this Pokemon, or this type rather, for VGC is that Burn immunity, which is, again, the big deal. But it's really going to be used quite often to just cook opposing Pokemon, because Fire offensively is a great typing. And when you pair that with the really high offensive stats that a lot of the Fire type Pokemon have, it makes it just even better to have that basically double boost on the stab type attacks. So I really do like the combination of the Tera Fire for the regular Fire type Pokemon and for the Pokemon that are going to be transforming into Fire types, even though you have that weakness to hazards, which is kind of counterintuitive compared to Bug, but Fire is just so much more of a better offensive type and honestly, better defensive type too. Then we have Flying. So Flying I like a lot as well. Again, newfound respect for it, but anything that grants an immunity is going to be a really big deal to me. So Flying going into the A tier is where I'm going to put it. I'm actually going to put it slightly higher than the Fighting, if I can actually correct this. There we go. And the reason for that is because Flying grants a ground immunity, super valuable, but also pairs really well with a lot of these Paradox Pokemon that are going to go for Acrobatics. So again, you have the booster energy, you have Acrobatics, you turn to Tera Flying, you're going to do really big damage, and you resist Fighting types as well. Really useful. I do feel like overall Flying offensively gets less love than it should. Flying has a couple of resists to Steel, to Rock, and to, there's one other typing, Electric, I believe it is. So that's not very many types at all. And a lot of those types there, they have double types that might be, well, neutral. They're weak to flying. So now you have a Pokemon that overall is taking neutral damage. I do like the combination a lot. There's a lot of really powerful offensive moves like Hurricane or Brave Bird, Acrobatics as well without the item, and it offers that immunity, so I do think that a natural fit for it is going to be into the A tier. Then we have Ghost. I love Ghost. Ghost is going to go straight to the S tier. I think Ghost is one of the best types that you could possibly have for Terastallizing because it grants 2 immunities, to normal and to fighting. Very, very important there. On top of that, it allows you to have a chance to switch out freely. You don't have to be worried about getting blocked or trapped by, what are they called, Shadow Tag. All those things are really useful. On top of that, in VGC, arguably more important, you have an immunity to normal for Fake Out. That is so incredibly valuable because Fake Out is arguably the best move to have in VGC, maybe outside of like Protect. Offensively, it's fantastic too because it has 1 resist, dark, it has 1 immunity, normal. Everything else takes neutral or better damage from that. And that is so, so important. So I do like the combination of Ghost with basically any type of Pokemon that you could possibly run, as long as it's a good offensive Pokemon. Even if it's defensive, it could do a lot of work as well as a Ghost type. Then we have Grass. Grass is gonna be the first type in our C tier here. Now, I think Grass in general, it's fine, but why on earth would I run Grass when I have other options? That's really the main reason why. So it's better in doubles than in singles, and the reason for that is because Spore and Rage Powder exist, and Grass types basically are immune to those things, which is really useful. But it also has the chance to just break through a lot of Ground-type Pokemon. And Ground-type Pokemon are weak to Ice and to Water, so why would I run Grass when I can run Ice, which is a really good offensive typing? Or Water, which is a better offensive and defensive type? It just doesn't make sense. So because of that, I'm going to put Grass down here in the C tier. It also defensively is just really not all that. It's got weaknesses to quite a few types: Ice, Bug, Poison, Flying. It is a lot of different types that has weaknesses too, so I really don't feel comfortable putting Grass into the higher than the C tier. Now we have Ground. So Ground, originally, if you guys want a video on what are the best types in Pokemon, Ground would be for sure S tier, but no. Ground is actually going to go into the B tier here. Why? Well, overall, it's good to have an electric immunity, which is nice, very important. Okay, I mentioned before in VGC that Stun Spore is very commonly run for electric type for paralyzing things, and Grass types are not immune to that. They're also not immune to glare or like secondary effects like Body Slam and stuff like that, but that's okay. The main issue that I have with Ground types is that really what Pokemon is going to want to turn into a Ground type. Okay, there's better types for basically everything else. If you're a Flying type Pokemon and you are weak to electric, or you're a Water type Pokemon that is weak to electric, why would you go into a Ground type when you're still weak to Ice or to Grass, respectively? That's really it. I see Ground more as being an offensive breaker type. You're going to be just bringing this thing in, clicking a Terastallizing button, and just try and break as much as you possibly can with your powerful double stab boosted Earthquakes, high horsepowers, Earth powers even, whatever the case might be. That's what I really see with the Ground type Terastallizing. Now for Ice. Ice is also going to go into C tier. This is a type, as I mentioned before, for fighting. I thought fighting was going to be down in the C tier. I thought Ice was going to be up into the B, maybe even to A tier, but then it just dropped. And the reason why Ice was dropped is because it's really only going to be used for stabs, and even then, most of the Pokemon that are going to be wanting to run the stab have like a dual typing that is going to be used better. Think of like Iron Bundle. When it was still legal in Smogon, it was running Terra Blast Water or Terra Water for boosted Hydro Pumps, which are really powerful. Yeah, you could have seen the odd one running for Freeze Dry, but I felt like Water was a bit more popular. On top of that, you have Chen Pao. Well, Chen Pao has 2 options. Is it going to run Ice, or is it going to run Dark, or is it going to run Fighting maybe? Those are the 3 common ones. Most of the time, it runs Fighting, or it runs Dark. Those are the common ones you're going to see, and it makes sense. Then you have Baxcalibur. Now, Baxcalibur, I get it. Boosting your Icicle Spears, sure. But most of the time, you want to be running Dragon to boost your Glaive Rushes. That's the main deal with Baxcalibur. So most of the time, with Ice-type Pokemon, you're going to want to run something else, your other stab options. And even then, any Ice-type has access to its Ice-type attacks. Why would it not want to run Electric after that? At that point in time, you get rid of your plethora of weaknesses, you get rid of the Rock weakness, and you now have Bolt Beam coverage with Stab on both of them. That is so incredibly valuable. We talked about how good Bolt Beam coverage is before, and that's exactly why I think that Ice would just fall down this tier list more and more. Honestly, you can even have an argument for F, but I respect the offensive capabilities of Ice types, and because of that, we're going to keep it in the C tier. Next up is going to be Normal. Normal again, another type I had up here in S tier, I had up here in A tier, and now it's actually going to fall down to the B tier. And the reason why it's falling to B tier is because while it offers an immunity to Ghost type attacks, it has a pretty hefty weakness to fighting and no resistances, none. And that is not great. Now, in a format like the very beginning of Scarlet and Violet, when Pokemon like Fluttermane were running around and being the absolute insane Pokemon they were, or Last Respects with the Houndstone were running around, then I get it. I get running normal on a lot of different Pokemon because you need to have those immunities or else you're going to lose those things. However, those Pokemon are banned. Houndstone is not as good in VGC. It will never be as good in VGC as it would be in singles, even with the ability to have Sand or Last Respects being illegal and whatever, because there's fewer Pokemon that can faint, so you're going to be having a lower powered Last Respects. Fluttermane is currently banned from VGC, so you're not as worried about the two main ghost types in the format. Yes, there's Pokemon like Dragapult, which are very scary and annoying. However, there are other answers to those Pokemon, which is important, and they can just turn into a dark type instead, which arguably is going to be better because then you can hit it for super effective stab damage. Very useful compared to normal, which yes, you are immune, but now it can just fire off dragon stabs against you and do a lot of work in that way. Again, that's really the main reason why. It's just there's a better option. So I do feel like Pokemon that take advantage of the normal type are going to be Pokemon that are already normal type Pokemon to get an extra boost on their stab attacks. Pair that with like a Silk Scarf or a Life Orb, is going to be doing a lot of damage. Now Poison. So Poison is going to fall into the C tier here. Poison has a lot of things that are going for in terms of the fact that you're now immune to T-Spikes and you're a T-Spikes absorber. Very nice. You have a couple of resistances to fighting, to grass, to bug, to fairy namely as well, but like, man, I just feel like Poison is so underwhelming. Like most of the time you'd want to run Steel to hit those fairy type Pokemon because it's a better defensive type and it's not, you know, as weak to a lot of different things. It has more resistances. It's not immune to anything either. Poison is immune to Steel. Or, well, no, Steel is immune to Poison, other way around. So I feel like in general, there's better options to run. And that's why I would never really want to go out of my way to run Poison on a Pokemon like this. Or any Pokemon, really. Moving on is going to be Psychic. Psychic is another type that's going to fall into the C tier. So Psychic is a really good offensive typing. It is. The issue that I have with Psychic in general is that the Dark type Pokemon, the Steel type Pokemon are like the best types in the entire game right now. And they're either immune or resist your attacks. On top of that, most Psychic type Pokemon have really good Psychic type attacks, whether it's Psyshock or Psychic or Future Sight or whatever the case might be. And then even Pokemon that aren't Psychic types, like normals or even Dark type Pokemon, have access to Psychic type attacks, like extra sensory at the bare minimum. So why on earth would I want to get Terra Blast Psychic? Just doesn't make sense. I'm weak to Knockoff, I'm weak to U-Turn. There's a lot of issues with it. I feel like it's mostly going to be run for stab, and even then, Pokemon like Gardevoir, for example, which are Psychic and Fairy, would want to run Fairy more so than they would want to run Psychic. That's the main reason why I have Psychic so low in the tier list. Rock. Ah, my god. Bug. You have a friend now. Bug has a friend. So my issue with Rock is this. There are better options like 95% of the time. Okay, why on earth would I want to run Rock outside of like, yeah, I want Stab Rock Slide in VGC. That's really it. Okay, sure, there's some Pokemon, like I can see Terrakion wanting to run that. I can see T-Tar sometimes wanting to run it because then it continues to get the boost from Sand, which is really nice. But yeah, the issue as well that I have is like there are so many Pokemon in this metagame that are not hit super effectively by rock type attacks that resist it. Think of Pokemon like Annihilate, that Pokemon resists it. Think of all the Steel types in the format, they resist it. Why would I want to run Rock when there's other options? So in general, these like bottom 6 here, why would I want to run these when there are better options? That's the main thing I have here. Moving on, though, is going to be Steel. Steel is fantastic. I like Steel a lot. It is arguably the best type in the game as well, but I'll put it over here in the S tier. And you'll notice something. Every single one of these types over here that are in the S tier have at least one immunity. Psychic for Dark, Dragon for Fairy, Poison for Steel, Fighting and Normal for Ghost. Really useful. And then the top of A tier has an immunity to Ground. Very useful. Steel is good because it offers you well, first of all, one of the best defensive typings in the game, period. On top of that, it offers you a way to offensively pressure a lot of Fairy type Pokemon without having to deal with an immunity like Poison would, which is really useful. It also is able to, in VGC, be one of the biggest threats. Right now in VGC, the best Pokemon arguably is Hydreigon. Hydreigon is a Dark and Dragon type. It also has Levitate. So when you Terra into Steel type Pokemon, you are no longer weak to Fairy 4 times, you are now resisting it. You also have an immunity to the Ground type, which is arguably the biggest weakness to the Steel type Pokemon outside of, well, close combats or whatever. That's a big deal overall. So I do feel like in general, Steel has a lot of utility for it in both singles and in doubles, and because of that, it's going to be awarded the S tier. And I think I'm actually going to shove it to the top of S tier for that very reason. Moving on, though, the final type is going to be Water. Now, where's Water going to go? Is it going to go into the A tier here? It's a really good bulky defensive typing. No, it is going to go into the B tier. The reason why I have Water in B is because as good of a defensive typing that it is, as good as bulky as you can be, it has a lot of types that it's taking neutral hits from. It doesn't resist much. It resists water, it resists fire, it resists I believe it resists ice, and that's it. Yeah, there's not much. And that's part of the issue. Because yes, you can be very bulky and defensive, but there's always going to be likely better options to hit Pokemon that are weak to the water type attacks. There's better options to hit rock type Pokemon or ground types. There's better options to hit Pokemon that are going to be taking your attacks. That's the main reason why I have it in B tier. On top of that, the water types that are in the game, most of the time, you want to be running their stab options. When Palafin was around, you'd be running the Terra Water to break as much as humanly possible with your Jet Punches after you get the couple of bulk up boosts. Another issue that I have is if you look at Pokemon like Sandy Shocks. The reason why Sandy Shocks, the reason why water is going to be better than grass and ice is because when you look at Sandy Shocks, which is a really good Pokemon, it has a ground and electric typing. That type, as good as it is, its coverage has a hard time hitting ground type Pokemon. Why on earth would I want to run grass when it's not as good offensively, ice when I'm weak to rocks, and I can run water instead? That's why it's higher than C. But I do feel like it's not on the same level as fighting and as flying. I will bump it up though. I will bump it up to go to about this range over here. I do think this is more of a fair list, but that's gonna be my tier list, guys. I feel like in general the tier list is solid. If you guys have any disagreements for it, let me know down in the comments below. I would love to hear what your thoughts are on it. In general, do I think that we have the tier list that is gonna be 100% accurate for the rest of the metagame? No, but I do think that for right now, this is what the metagame is calling for both singles and for VGC. So guys, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like on the video. Let me know what your thoughts are on the tier list down in the comments below for your chance to be named the winner of the comment of the day. Make sure to subscribe to the channel as well to help us on the road to now 4,000 subscribers. And again, I want to give a big thank you to all of you for helping us reach our end of year goal, 3,000 subscribers. I really do appreciate it. And I hope you guys continue to enjoy the content and the ride that we are going through. So thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you all tomorrow.